Hey, what's going on, scholars? It's Ryan Lewis. We're going to be talking about an analysis of All the Light We Cannot See. We're going to be going over four things, four topics in this. We're going to talk about a biography of Anthony Doerr, a historical and cultural context of the book when it was written, setting of the book. We're going to be going over a plot synopsis and analysis, as well as connections of the novel to the real world, whether it's my life, just in general. And yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so we already went over this analysis of All the Light We Cannot See. These are the four things we're going to be going over, and let's get into it. This is the Anthony Doerr biography, just a little brief thing. He was born in 1973 in Cleveland, Ohio. Went to university school, an all-boys private school, similar to the one that Werner goes to. He goes to Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. Major in history, graduated in 1995. He's published two novels, one memoir, and two collections of short stories. And All Light We Cannot See was the second novel that he wrote. So why did he write the novel? In this quote, he says, "I had been scratching around for a new idea. I was riding into Penn Station, I think it was, and we were going through the tunnels underground. The guy in the seat right in front of me was on a 2004 cell phone and lost his call. He got angry, physically angry. He was rapping his phone with his knuckles. So this sight, seeing the man get so angry with his phone made him think about, why is he so angry? This is so cool that we have this technology to make us communicate so easily. And that made him think about the technology we have now, and made him think about what would be this miracle back in the early 1900s. And he decided it was the radio in the 20s and 30s. So that kind of gave him the basic blueprint that he wanted to follow for All the Light You Cannot See. So Werner, with the radios, he just knew that he had a sight in his head of a boy listening to a radio of a girl reading a book. That was the main premise. And then a year later, he took a trip to St. Malo. It was in France, to promote his novel After Greece. St. Malo in World War II was occupied by Germany, and about 80% of the city was destroyed by American bomber jets. And when he went there, he said that the city looked very old and had a lot of history, but it was actually quite new-ish. Most of it was destroyed, and that was really how the main setting came into play. These are actually pictures of St. Malo. So you can see in the one picture on the left, it looks kind of new, like a tourist spot. On the right, it looks a little bit older. You can tell those are the spots that weren't necessarily completely destroyed. You can see it goes right into the ground, onto the beach. So, historical and cultural context. The emergence of the cell phone in the 2000s was a very big part of the reasoning of why he wrote this. Seeing the guy with the phone, it was an awakening for him in this novel. So in the 2000s, there was an explosion for technology and surge in different cell phone advances, social media. Now we have be able to communicate with more people faster, farther away. Ever before, I can hit up my friend in Australia, and it takes less than a minute for him to respond back. He thought back to the radio in the 20s and 30s, and it's similar to phones today, made communication way easier. We can talk with the radio. We were able to talk like the cell phones now, farther away, more people, and faster, just more accessible overall. And it was a very, very big part in World War II, especially with code speakers. So as you see in the bottom left, the pictures of all the phones, it just shows how far we've made advances with just cell phones alone. So it kind of shows the quote-unquote miracle that Doerr is talking about. And to the right, you see all the kids around the radio, similar to Werner and his sister. So let's go over a brief plot synopsis first before we get into the analysis. So there are three main characters: Werner, Marie Lohr, and Reinhold von Rumpel. Werner is a young German orphan. He enjoyed working on radios and then listening to them with his sister. He's so good at fixing the radios that he gained the attention of a high-ranking officer that got him into a Nazi school and gave him a new opportunity. The school made him question a lot of things about himself, and the things he believes in also makes him witness many cruel things, along with the things he sees when he's sent out as a soldier. So one of the biggest things that comes with Werner is Um, when he gets into the Nazi school, he goes and destroys the radio that him and his sister were listening to, kind of going into the losing of his own free will, but he also took away his sister's, which kind of into the morality of all these things. Marie Laure, a young French woman. She actually wasn't blind. She had cataracts and grew blind. Fun fact, I have cataracts in one eye. She learned to navigate the world by studying scale models of the places she lived in that her father made. She went through a lot of trauma in the novel. She grew up without a mother. She lost her sight. And then when her father, quote unquote, mysteriously disappears, she never is able to see him again. And then she also had to stay in a room for multiple days hiding from Von Rumpel, who's looking for the Sea of Flame diamonds that she held. Her character kind of represents resilience, and her odd ties with the other characters, Sea of Flames diamond, Von Rumpel, and with the radios of her grandfather connecting to Werner. It really makes the reader question whether fate is actually a part of this or not, or it's just weird coincidences that tie in. Von Rumpel is the antagonist of the story. He's a Nazi. He believes in the whole ideology, so obviously not a good person. He's a gemologist. He collects treasure stolen by people, stolen from people by the Nazi regime. He doesn't really care or even think about where the treasures came from, how they were taken, whether someone died to get it, or what happened to these people. He wants the Sea of Flames diamond because he wants to give himself more power to rise and make himself more successful, and he wants immortality because he does have cancer, and he wants to get himself as much power as possible. That's a sketch on the right of what the diamond could look like. Obviously, it's described as really pretty, so yeah, it's good. The biggest themes that I noticed throughout this novel was the fate versus free will debate, and it's shown through the characters and their struggles. So Werner, I think, is the biggest example. The struggle of choice is the biggest thing. So he has complete freedom with his sister until he joins the regime. So he was able to listen to the radio as much as he wanted to, the illegal foreign radio broadcasts that he was not supposed to be, and then he gets into the school and obviously he destroys it so no one can, and he just completely does what the Nazi regime wants him to do. Also, his interactions with Frederick told him that he says, "You don't really think this life is yours, do you?" And that shows that Frederick is kind of like, "No, we're just puppets for this. No, they don't care. We're just doing what the higher ups want us to do. We don't have any choice in this. This life is not yours anymore." And that actually is one of the biggest things for Werner, reasoning why he does not want to come back to the school when he goes on that break. It really delves deep into his morality, so the right versus wrong of it all. So when he watches Frederick get beaten, he just stands there and watches, even though that's not what he wants to do. He wants to help Frederick, but he simply can't because he would get beat too. So his free will is very restricted, and obviously that's not how he wants to live. Like when he meets Marie Laure at the end, he says, "This is the only day I felt that I've truly lived," and that's when he truly exercises his free will, when he goes and helps Marie Laure with Von Rumpel and kills him. Madame Manek, she kind of proposes the question of what is living. So is it free will, or is it just doing what quote unquote fate decides? She decides to protest and fight back against the Nazi regime, and she incites kind of like a revolution, I guess you could say. She wants to get others to fight back, close all their shops, do what she can to make sure that they can't completely take over France. Etienne decides not to join her, and that's when she gets mad at him. She's like, are you just going to sit here and let them trample over you? Is that even living? You're not even, so that really, she proposes that biggest, most blatant question. Eventually, Etienne does come around when she dies. Marie Laure, her connection with the Sea of Flame diamond being cursed, it's the whole thing is that she's supposed to just have bad luck all the way through, absolutely awful life because of the curse that comes with the diamond, but she still acts in her own in spite of this. She overcomes the complications with being blind and eventually comes out and leads a successful life, unlike really the rest of these characters who all die or anything like that. She's like the one who comes out on top after she throws this diamond into the sea. That's her own free will. Text to real world connections, as we already gone over, technology, the radio is comparative to the phones. So, yeah, we've basically gone over that. The radios, they're used to communicate, and that's the whole inspiration to today. Yeah, we've gone over that. Horrors of war, I think, is a very big thing that kind of gets ignored, even though it's talked about all the time. Should still be talked about more. Von Rumpel, he has a limp, he has cancer, he's doing everything he can to kind of give himself immortality and live forever and save himself, yet he's still just an awful human being. And he's really an awful human being because of the Nazi regime, which came about because of militarism, nationalism, all these awful things. And that's really why he is such an awful person like him is able to get into power. Werner, he loses basically his humanity, his innocence, all of it through war. Like when he goes to Russia and sees those piles of dead bodies and people laying next to him, he realizes like what is actually happening. Like it's all done for him after he joins the school at such a young age. And Frederick, he was kind of the innocence, the balance that was supposed to keep Werner tied down to earth. He just keeps beaten because he's not good enough, and he eventually he doesn't like die necessarily. He just kind of goes brain dead, I guess you could say. Can't remember Werner. He doesn't like his love for birds. He's not the same person anymore, all because of war. And that's really the biggest thing that you can take away from this is that, like, hey, war sucks, you know. And yeah. Thank you for watching. This was my analysis of All the Light We Cannot See, Fate versus Free Will, Connection to Technology. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.